name is Yoon Brown-Schmidt. I'm Associate Professor of Psychology and Human Development at Vanderbilt University. And today I'm here to tell you about a new paper in the journal Cognitive Science that I published with Yoon, who is Assistant Professor at the University of Iowa. In this project, what we looked at is how people address groups in multi-party conversation. To look at this question, what we did is we had pairs of people get together and play a game where they learn the names for abstract images like these. And so, for example, they might learn to call the first one the duck, the next one in the top row the bear, next the bunny, and so on and so forth. They made common ground for these image names. What we were interested in then is, now that this pair of partners knows the names for these images, how would speakers address larger groups of people? Larger groups that varied in their knowledge of these names. And so in a study looking at four-party conversation, we had speakers describe these same images to different groups. So on the left, I'm showing a group where it's a single person who does know the name of the images, like this is a dancer. And on the very right is a single person who doesn't know the name of the image. It's a person who had never seen it before. And in the middle, we had combinations of people who were and were not familiar with the image names. What we were interested in is how many words people would use to try to describe this image for somebody as a function of how much the listener or the group of listeners knew. In this first experiment, what we found is as the average knowledge of the group went down, the average number of the words that the speaker used went up, suggesting that speakers were able to track the average knowledge of a group in four-party conversation. In another experiment, we replicated this in five-party conversation. We had speakers address groups where some of the people knew the names of the images and some didn't. And again, what we found is as the average knowledge of the group went down, the average length of the speaker's descriptions of these abstract images went up, suggesting that speakers can keep track of how many people in a group know the name of images. In a final experiment, we recruited people in groups of 7 and asked if speakers could keep track of what 6 people in the group did and did not know. So would they address groups of 3 people who knew the names, or 3 people who didn't know the names, or combinations in between? And again, we found that people were able to track the average knowledge of the group. As the average knowledge of the group went down, the speakers used longer and longer expressions. What does any of this mean? These data tell us that people can remember what people know in groups of anywhere from 3 to 6 other individuals. They can keep track of who knows what and use that to change what they say to meet the average knowledge of the group. So when the average knowledge of the group is high, people are able to use brief expressions like the dancer. And when the average knowledge of the group is low, people use much more elaborate descriptions in order to help the people who don't know very much understand what's going on. These findings have potential implications for pedagogical settings. So for example, how do teachers address a group of students who vary in their background knowledge of the topic at hand? These data would suggest that perhaps what teachers are doing is calculating the average knowledge of the group and addressing the average. Whether that's a useful pedagogical technique or not is unknown, and that's something that we could address in this work. Thank you so much for your attention. This work was generously supported by the National Science Foundation.